Hello and welcome then to RWR Plays TEW 2020. This is chapter 24 of WCW Lives On, where we are playing as WCW in 2001, being booked by Eric Bischoff on behalf of Fusion Media Ventures, who bought the company as opposed to WWE in this alternative history. And today we have the go home TV taping before the Lethal Lottery, the unique tournament that's going to be coming up at the end of this weekend, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting. Before we go any further, if you have been enjoying this series, thank you to those people who've already given us a subscribe. But if you aren't one of those people, please hit that subscribe button and join us for the rest of this series as it continues onwards. Now, before we go to this week's TV taping, a little look back at the last one we did, which was in Connecticut. And of course, the big news coming out of that was Jeff Jarrett winning the WCW World Heavyweight Championship from Booker T. As I'm recording this, I don't know what the response has been to that. There could be some people who are disappointed or surprised or whatever. So it'd be very interesting to continually, for this video too, get your thoughts on Jeff Jarrett becoming the world champion. As I said in the previous episode, it was something that I went back and forth on quite a lot because I wasn't really sure whether it was the right decision or not. And I've got a lot of future plans that kind of involved that taking place. I wasn't sure if I went and did in the other direction, how I would kind of navigate those kind of plans. So Jeff Jarrett is the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion as we go into the next pay-per-view. And of course, he won't be defending the belt at the Lethal Lottery because the Lethal Lottery is just a tournament to determine the next number one contender and the person who will face the WCW World Champion at Halloween Havoc. Also on the show then, we saw Great Sasuke successfully defend the WCW Cruiserweight Championship against Evan Courageous. We also saw Air Raid earn themselves a Cruiserweight Tag Team title shot in a triple threat match against Kidman, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Chaos Theory. And we saw a great opener between Lance Storm and Kurt Hennig, which was a really, really cool match, with them shaking hands after the contest. So without further ado then, let's get on to this week's TV taping. And we are back in the Southwest region for this particular TV taping, and we start with the dark match, which sees the Steiner brothers take on the European Union, and the Steiner brothers win the match in 7:45 when Rick Steiner pins Alex Wright. Scott Steiner again was fantastic in the ring, a 97 for him. Rick Steiner a 73, Norman Smiley and Alex Wright a 47 and 48, but the overall segment rating here is 77, so a really good way to get the crowd excited, and this would have served as well as a Nitro main event. That's how good it was. So yeah, a really good match, but ultimately a dark match before the TV taping got underway. So let's go into the episode of Nitro here at the Levy Center in California. And we start with Jeff Jarrett and his Jarrett administration coming to the ring, with Tony Schiavone introducing the new WCW World Champion, Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett is of course flanked by John Cena and Mike Sanders, and they all are looking very happy with themselves. When Jarrett and his entourage get to the ring, Tony Schiavone congratulates him on his victory last week, but wonders out loud whether Jarrett could have done it without the help of the two men with him tonight. Jarrett says that Schiavone has a point. He couldn't have done it without either Mike Sanders or John Cena. He says that Sanders was instrumental in ensuring that there were no legal shenanigans that allowed either Booker T to duck him or WCW to deny him the rightful opportunities that were his. Meanwhile, John Cena had given him the peace of mind that he could go about his business in the ring without fear of being attacked from behind by some other nefarious individual looking to make a name for themselves. Schiavone commented that wasn't quite what he had in mind, but nevertheless, he asked Jarrett who he thought would come out on top of the Lethal Lottery this coming weekend to book their place at Halloween Havoc against him for the title. Jarrett responded by saying that he has no idea who will win, saying that nobody has ever faced a tournament such as this before, and it could be any individual's opportunity. He says all he knows is that he will be kicking back with his feet up, watching on to see who could come out on top. Mike Sanders then took the mic from Tony Schiavone and said that he was now going to officially swear in Jeff Jarrett as champion of World Championship Wrestling. Jarrett took off his belt and Sanders asked him to place one hand on the title. He then asked Jarrett to repeat after him, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully defend the WCW Heavyweight Title of the world and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect and defend the prestige of the title belt in all its glory. Jarrett repeated the oath and then his music played as the three men celebrated in the ring. So this was just an opening segment to really underline Jeff Jarrett's victory and the fact that he is now the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Not a particularly great rating for this segment, only a 58, which is a shame. Jeff Jarrett was actually pretty good, so was Schiavone. I'm not really sure what the problem was. It seems Mike Sanders wasn't so great in this one. But anyway, Jarrett is the World Champion. This was kind of his celebratory kind of parade almost at the beginning of the title reign. So the first match of the night is the Cruiserweight Tag Team title match, and sees the FBI defend against Air Raid in a match that went for 10 minutes and 28 seconds and was won by the FBI when Frankie Cicero pinned Air Paris. This only got a segment rating of 36, which is a real disappointment. Cicero didn't perform particularly well. Maritato was not as good as he usually is. Air Paris was off his game. Not a great match, not a great advert for the Cruiserweight Tag Team title, unfortunately, and the FBI come out on top. But I think we've got a little bit of an issue with the Cruiserweight Tag Team titles in general. Rey Mysterio Jr. and Billy Kidman, who were the previous champions, were obviously a cut above in terms of their overall popularity and everything, and so we're just going to have to start building this up without them now that they've lost the belts. Next up, we get Shane Douglas coming out for another open challenge. He says that once more WCW management have given him some TV time on the proviso that there is no presence at ringside of Chronic, and he will issue an open challenge. Douglas says that 2 weeks ago he showed Tommy Dreamer that the franchise is not messing about and asks if there is anybody in the locker room ready to step up and face him. After a few moments, Bobby Eaton emerges from the entranceway to answer Douglas's challenge. So a segment rating here, 43, nothing specific to really mention. A little bit less impressive than we'd like from Douglas, who's a really good talker, but nevertheless we continue on. Shane Douglas versus Bobby Eaton is up, and they have a match that goes for 7 minutes and 55 seconds, and Shane Douglas gets the victory by pinfall. And this is better, segment rating of 64. Both perform pretty well. Bobby Eaton has been very, very consistent since coming in, but we have used him mainly as an enhancement talent, which is perhaps not befitting his overall talent, but ultimately in 2001 I think it's difficult to find a place for Eaton. Maybe other people disagree, but I just think given his general look and his lack of maybe star power at this point in his career, I think it's difficult to imagine Bobby Eaton in a more important role. We'll continue to review that if Bobby Eaton continues to perform as he has been. Next, we have Sharmell Sullivan backstage and introducing her guest, Sting. Sharmell Sullivan says that this coming weekend, the Lethal Lottery takes place over 2 nights, but as yet, Sting hasn't indicated whether he will be taking part. Sting says that he hadn't realised it was important for him to do so. He assumed that everybody would want to be in the tournament when the prize was a world title shot at Halloween Havoc. Sting says that for the avoidance of all doubt, he is today officially announcing his entry into the Lethal Lottery and tells the other 31 competitors that he'll see them at the weekend. So Sharmell Sullivan didn't really perform particularly well, but Sting was a real star anyway and enjoyed himself going off script. So this was a 69 segment rating, pretty decent. Sharmell's been okay in her position. She's been better than Scott Hudson was as the second or the B-level interviewer, and I think I will continue to keep her in that position for the time being. We then had Bill Goldberg in a match against Sean Stasiak, a short one of course, 4 minutes 59 seconds, Goldberg winning by pinfall, a segment rating of 50. The match suffered because of the lack of selling on display, but Goldberg continues to perform really, really well in the ring. Stasiak only a rating of 45, and he was obviously a massive drag on the rating overall. Immediately following the match, Tony Schiavone gets in the ring and grabs a word with Bill Goldberg. He says that just a few moments ago, Sting added his name to the list of competitors in this weekend's Lethal Lottery tournament, alongside the likes of Ric Flair, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, and many others. He then asks Goldberg if he'll be competing. Goldberg says that now that he has dealt with that no-good Shane Douglas, he's ready to get serious about the WCW World Heavyweight Title, and so his message to all the other 31 competitors in the Lethal Lottery is simple: you're all next. Not a great segment this. Goldberg continues to struggle on the mic, so he only got a segment rating of 40. Tony Schiavone was decent, but not quite as good as we would have hoped for. And once again, I failed to heed my previous advice, which was to keep Goldberg off the mic as much as we possibly can. Next up, we had Tommy Dreamer versus Nick Gage. Obviously, a match that was announced on WCW Saturday Night the previous week. And in this bout, Nick Gage was being outdone by his more experienced opponent and then decided enough was enough. He low-blowed Tommy Dreamer for the DQ finish in 7 minutes and 4 seconds. And Tommy Dreamer gets the victory. A segment rating of 41. Nick Gage only a 16 in-ring performance. But this match will certainly not have hurt his overall popularity, and Dreamer was pretty damn good here. The announcing lifted the match, so did the colour commentary, so that's really good. And Tommy Dreamer had a great performance, and a 66 actually is probably the best performance he's had since the save began. And again, straight after the match, Nick Gage took advantage of Dreamer's compromised position following the low blow and proceeded to beat Dreamer down with a steel chair, furiously putting the boots to Dreamer as well. Eventually, Terry Funk came to the ring, steel chair in hand, and stood over the body of Dreamer to protect him from Gage. Gage walked off with an angry expression still on his face. So here we have a segment rating of 47, and Tommy Dreamer came across well. So again, another good segment for Nick Gage to be involved in terms of the overall rating, and I'm relatively satisfied with this little extra story we're running at the moment with Nick Gage. I'm interested to see where it goes, and potentially Gage could become a longer term prospect for us if the quality that we're seeing right now is gonna get better and gonna continue on this sort of path. Next up, we get the final of the Hot Prospect Tournament, and it features Bobby Roode against the Amazing Red, and Bobby Roode wins in 11 minutes and 14 seconds by pinfall using underhanded tactics. Bobby Roode wins the WCW Hot Prospect Tournament. Amazing Red had an in-ring performance of 29, Bobby Roode of 27. Of course, this was only their third match each in WCW and their first each on Nitro, so a segment rating of 25 as the crowd were turned off by having a match outside of the pre-show between workers they don't have any investment in. So this was the end of the Hot Prospect Tournament. It was a little bit of an experiment. I wanted to bring in a number of different wrestlers, some younger wrestlers who perhaps were not very well known, and put them in this kind of tournament setting. Bobby Roode has come out on top, and we'll see what happens with both of these guys as it goes on. But a good victory for Bobby Roode, and a segment rating here of 25. So next up, we have Tony Schiavone in the backstage area and speaks to Booker T for an interview. Schiavone asks how Booker T is feeling following last week's loss to Jeff Jarrett and in the process losing his WCW title. Booker T says that he's not going to lie, it didn't feel good. He says that Jeff Jarrett may be calling himself the world champion, but he knows deep down that it took him and 2 other guys to get the job done. But Booker T says he won't make excuses. Booker then asks Schiavone whether he's the guy who's been going around here asking everybody about the lethal lottery, and asks Schiavone if he's going to ask him about it too. Schiavone then says that he was going to ask him, and then asks Booker T whether he'll be competing in the lethal lottery this weekend. Booker responds by saying that you better believe he's going to be in the lethal lottery, and adds that Jeff Jarrett may be carrying around that WCW World Title belt, but he's just got it on loan, and he tells Jarrett to keep it warm for him because he's going to be getting it back at Halloween Havoc. So segment rating here of 65. Schiavone underperformed, but Booker T was a real star. Pretty happy with that one, as Booker T vows to win the lethal lottery and then take the title back from Jeff Jarrett at Halloween Havoc. Next, we have another match that was advertised ahead of time, with the Gothic Collective defeated Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo in 10 minutes and 18 seconds in a no disqualification tag team match when Vampiro pinned Sean O'Haire. But during the match, we also had Chuck Palumbo turn on O'Haire. So this was a segment rate of 69, so a really good segment between 2 teams that have been performing well. Jester 61, Vampiro 67, Palumbo 50, Sean O'Haire 57. So what happens here effectively is that Sean O'Haire starts the match for his team, and during the course of the match, the Gothic Collective prevent Palumbo from tagging in by distracting the ref when Palumbo manages to get the tag, and then distracting Palumbo just as the point that O'Haire was reaching for the tag. Eventually, O'Haire gets free and looks to tag Palumbo, but instead of letting him tag him, Palumbo gets in the ring and hits him with a big clothesline, followed by a sidewalk slam, which allows Vampiro to then cover O'Haire for the 1, 2, 3. So Chuck Palumbo turns on Sean O'Haire in the course of this match. Just going to handle that change. So Chuck Palumbo turning heel, and it was a complete success. After the match, Chuck Palumbo continues to beat on O'Haire, and meanwhile Vampiro grabs the microphone. Vampiro says that ever since the relaunch of WCW, there's been one thing that's been consistent when it comes to the O'Haire and Palumbo team, and that is that everybody agrees that Sean O'Haire is destined for the very top. He continues that in this vein, everybody has been sleeping on the real star of the team, Chuck Palumbo. Palumbo, he says, has been in the shadow of his teammate, and it was burning Palumbo up inside. But now he has chosen to walk a new path, a path alongside him and Jester in the Gothic Collective. Vampiro concludes that everybody should put their hands together for the man formerly known as Chuck Palumbo, now reborn in the role he was really meant to play, Prodigy. So the segment rating here of 65, pretty decent. We've got the explanation of Palumbo's heel turn out of the way immediately, and also Palumbo's new ring name, which is Prodigy, and he will be joining the Gothic Collective alongside Vampiro and Jester. And then we go to our main event, which is for the United States title, and sees deep in the match DDP having the title won after hitting a diamond cutter. However, just before the referee was about to slap the mat for a third time and crown Page the new champion, Kevin Nash pulls the referee out of the ring, preventing him from completing the pinfall, and then the ref immediately calls for the disqualification to Awesome, meaning that the Page had won the match but not the title. So Mike Awesome retains the belt after 7 minutes and 28 seconds and a segment rating of 77, so that's really great. Mike Awesome was fantastic in the match, an 80 in-ring performance. He's improving all the time. Meanwhile, DDP only a 66. I was a little bit conflicted with the slightly cheap DQ finish, to be honest. I wasn't sure that I really should allow DDP to be disqualified. Mike Awesome to be disqualified just because Kevin Nash pulled out a referee from the ring. But at the same time, it was the thing that most suited what I wanted to take place here. In the post-match, meanwhile, Kevin Nash already walking up the ramp as DDP waited for the announcement. And when Nash got to the top of the ramp, he turned around to face DDP and smirked as it sunk into DDP that Nash had screwed him out of the US title. So the Nash DDP feud continuing, segment rating here of 68, and a pretty decent way to finish off what was a pretty good show, I would suggest. So that is Nitro, an overall rating of 71. It increased our popularity everywhere, which is exactly what we wanted. A really good main event between DDP and Mike Awesome, which perhaps had a slightly disappointing finish. The Gothic Collective versus Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo was also a really good match. Really pleased with that. And also Shane Douglas versus Bobby Eaton was a very decent match too. So this wasn't a bad episode of Nitro at all. DDP and Mike Awesome's match will go in quite high, I think, in terms of our rankings of the top matches of the year so far. So yeah, pretty good. And as I said, overall rating of 71 is exactly where we're looking to do. So now we're going to go to WCW Saturday Night. Okay then, so here is WCW Saturday Night, and you can see that the attendance for the TV taping, the Nitro and Saturday Night combined TV taping, is 3,120, so that's a really good number in California as the Southwest popularity continues to increase for the company. The Saturday Night show begins with Conan defeating Johnny Swinger in 7 minutes and 11 seconds by pinfall. Conan performed really well again. Johnny Swinger only a 28, but he's been used as a jobber almost entirely since we began this save. And this got the show off to a strong start, a segment rating of 55, which is pretty decent. So the next segment is a backstage interview. Sharmell Sullivan interviewing Totally Buff, and she asks them about their participation in the Lethal Lottery and the chances that they will have of winning overall. Buff Bagwell says that they are the WCW World Tag Team Champions, and that means that the title around their waist says they are the best tag team in the world today. Luger follows up by saying that each of them have all the tag team experience they need to excel at the Lethal Lottery, where tag team wrestling is what it's all about. Sullivan reminds them, however, that the Lethal Lottery will see teams drawn at random, where it is unlikely that they will be drawn together, and says that in truth they may even have to face one another on opposite sides of the ring. Bagwell and Luger look at each other worried, but Bagwell says that if that should happen, Luger would know what to do. Luger agrees and nods his head, though their facial expressions show that it's clear they may not be entirely on the same page. So, segment rating here of 61. Sharmell Sullivan was not very good during this, but didn't seem to affect the segment rating too much, as Bagwell and Luger were really good in the segment. The next match is in the women's title round robin and gets a segment rating of 20, and it sees Kana defeat Jillian Hall in 5 minutes and 42 seconds by submission. They have pretty good chemistry apparently, and Kana has got an in-ring performance of 30, so not doing too badly, though the crowd were still turned off by having a match outside of the pre-show between workers they don't have any investment in. So we're still not really making the inroads that I was hoping we would do by this point. Incidentally, this was the last match in the women's title round robin that I will not be deciding the victor for. So again, all of the first 4 rounds of this round robin have been decided. The winners have been decided by the road agents. From now on, I will be determining the winners of the matches so that we can fashion this into a finish that will be interesting and also lead to other things for a number of the women involved in the tournament. Then we get Tony Schiavone introducing some footage that was not aired on Nitro but took place on Monday night. It shows Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk in the interview area, having just arrived backstage following Nick Gage's attack on Dreamer. In the footage, Dreamer can be seen angrily telling Funk that he didn't want him to get messed up in this thing with Gage and saying he should have stayed away from the ring. Funk tells Dreamer that he only came out there because Dreamer was having his ass handed to him, but Dreamer says he would have dealt with it. So segment rating here of 45, and perhaps a little bit of tension creeping in between Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk over the whole Nick Gage thing. I'm not entirely sure that this is particularly coherent as a story, if I'm perfectly honest at the moment. The idea being that Nick Gage has said that he kind of admires both Dreamer and Funk. Funk sort of saying, yeah, you might admire me, but basically you're not showing anybody any respect. Referring to the fact that Gage had obviously attacked Teddy Hart in his first round tournament match in the Hot Prospects tournament. Nick Gage then calling Terry Funk out, but Dreamer saying that he didn't belong in the ring with a guy like Terry Funk and he should face him instead. And then Gage obviously attacking Dreamer on this week's episode of Nitro. That's a summary of the storyline, and that's how I kind of justified it in my head as something that's happening. But I think that over the course of the few episodes we've done this in, it's not been the most coherent thing. So hopefully that summary gives you some idea of the idea behind what we've seen so far. Segment rating of 45 anyway, pretty decent. And we move on. And we move on to a tag team match, which sees the American Mavericks take on Bobby Quance and JJ Perez. So this is just a straight squash match that allows the American Mavericks to get another victory. I realised I'd been a bit neglectful of the American Mavericks recently. We haven't seen them in a fair little while, so they get a little victory here. Only a segment rating of 24. Chris Harris pinning Bobby Quance after 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Harris and James Storm are both at 35 rating, so that's good, but obviously they were facing two guys that weren't particularly were just in for the night, basically a one-shot deal, and the crowd were turned off by having a match outside the pre-show between workers they don't invest in. So unfortunately the Mavericks are not yet at the point we want them to be, so we've got some work with them to go. And next we get Toshiaki Kawada against Ice Train in a match which goes 8 minutes and 7 seconds and is won by Kawada by pinfall, a segment rating here of 34. And again, another match where the workers don't have any investment in the wrestlers, and Toshiaki gets his second victory in a row here against Ice Train. This was just to give Kawada another victory, but the story that I'm running with Kawada, I'm not entirely satisfied with at the moment, and I need to kind of reassess exactly what I'm trying to do here. It didn't help that we had him debut and then didn't appear the following week, and here he is on Saturday night, so he's not appeared on Nitro for 2 weeks now. But hopefully, going forward, again, the Kawada thing will be a bit more coherent and will be a bit more, make sense of why we're actually doing this. Next, backstage, Lance Storm is interviewed by Sharmell Sullivan. Sullivan asks Storm what his chances are at the Lethal Lottery, and Storm says that he's ready to take on whoever is put in his way by the draw and win the tournament overall. So a segment rating of 440. Neither Sharmell Sullivan or Lance Storm performed particularly well, unfortunately. And then the main event of this week's Saturday night was Ric Flair versus Mark Jindrak. Ric Flair getting the victory in 12-16 by pinfall, a segment rating of 63. But look at Ric Flair's in-ring performance at 90. I'm a little bit reluctant to take advantage of how good his in-ring performance is at the moment, because I don't think it rings true, quite frankly, in 2001. But there's no denying that in the game right now he's looking really good, and Mark Jindrak was still off of his game during the match and it's still got a segment rating of 63. So pretty happy with the finish here, and Ric Flair gets a victory over Jindrak. And that is the end of the TV taping, Nitro and Saturday night, for another week. And of course, when we come back, the next show will be the Lethal Lottery itself. Now, I gotta be honest, I haven't really decided myself whether or not going to do one episode where we cover the entire Lethal Lottery, or we will do it in 2 different episodes. And I think the decision I will make as I'm recording, because I'm not entirely sure how long each one will take me. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what everybody's kind of reaction is to the Lethal Lottery. I don't think it will be a particularly successful show in terms of commercially in the game, because we haven't and we are not advertising any matches ahead of time. That's purely really though to sell the concept of the Lethal Lottery and the random draw that will be taking place as part of that. It will be a 32-man tournament, and as I've explained previously, basically all those 32 men will be drawn into random tag teams for the first round against random opponents. They will face them, and then the winners of all those matches, the 16 winners, will go through to the second round, where they will again be randomly drawn into 8 different teams. The 8 teams, the 4 teams that come out on top will then go through to the semi-finals, where again they'll be randomly drawn into teams against other randomly drawn teams, and then again the 2 teams that win that will then go into a 4-way match, a 4-way singles match, to determine the winner of the Lethal Lottery. That's how it's going to happen over the course of 2 nights. So as again, I say, I'm not entirely sure if the next video I bring you will be both those nights, or just we'll do each night on individual videos, but we shall see. Just one more thing before I go today, a couple of bits of news. Obviously, Raw as Warriors always like to look and see how they're doing. Not a particularly great show for them by their recent standards anyway, as Too Cool become the new World Tag Team Champions, beating Team Greatness, who are Matt Bloom and Paul White. So that's interesting. Big Show and A-Train, or Big Show and Albert, potentially, as it was at the time. And that was the main event. And underneath that, they had the Hardy Boys defeat Edge and Christian in a far better match. But none of the big names competing at the top of the show this week, which is interesting. Meanwhile, AAA are talking up WCW, so that's cool. AAA are apparently intentionally making positive noises about WCW, stressing their friendship in a genuine attempt by AAA officials to create a solid, stable bond between the 2 companies. So we are looking to bring in some talent from AAA in the not too distant future, and we have, as a consequence, been building up a bit of a relationship with them to do that. So that is everything from this week's TV taping. As I said, the next episode will be Lethal Lottery, either just night 1 or both nights. So I'm looking forward to bringing you that. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up on the video. That's always appreciated. And as I said before, a subscription won't do us any harm either. Click on the subscribe button to continue to follow along with this series. That is everything for this time around. So until next time, thank you for watching.